words.
Okay, we are starting this second day of retreat, of an online retreat, and coming together with you all who have been coming to the daily online meditation. And we're going to talk today a bit or introduce a sutta called the Satipatthana Sutta.
And for some of you, it won't be an introduction. For some of you, it will be circling back to that because it's such a fundamental or foundational sutta in our practice of reflective meditation that we circle back to it.
Quite a bit, quite a bit. And it's an interesting sutta in the fact it has a little different translation of the Pali language. Foundations of awareness, foundations of mindfulness, focuses of awareness, but basically awareness is what we're talking about.
Right, and particular areas in which we, well, the Sutta says we should cultivate awareness. And those four areas, which we'll tell you about in a little bit, it's not about the order of them. It's never for us that there's a particular order and you must do 1, 2, 3, 4. Although many meditation instructions really do start with the first, which is awareness of the body, and even they take even a smaller area of the body, not all of the things suggested in the sutta. But we don't necessarily start there. But we think it's important to include and integrate the different areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, just jumping off that, not looking at lists in order. The Buddha gave this teaching later in his experience, from what we understand. This wasn't his first teaching. It was something that after he had been teaching a long while. It's a kind of culmination and compilation of what he learned from teaching Dharma, the Dharma that we understand. And this fourth foundation, which is again, we'll go into these in a little bit, but it's basically talking about the mind that comes up with the teachings, and that all of the teachings that he put into this sutta, there were, quite a bit of lists. So again, not looking at any of those lists in a kind of order of you've got to learn this first and then that, or even you've got to learn this teaching first and then that. There's a real individuality into what you're going to learn and how you're going to learn it.
On the other hand, we, as you keep hearing the Dharma teachings, which are the fourth foundation, you know them better and better and start seeing them in your experience more and more. And that does take time.
Why is that on the other hand? I think that's in addition to, right?
Yeah, you were saying there's no order, and I was saying in a certain sense there is an order because it's easier to just be aware of the breath, which is in the first foundation. Like right now, you don't have to know anything more. You could just feel the breath. Now that develops over time, without a doubt. But it does, I think, take longer to really know the teachings and really find them in your experience. That's all I was saying. Maybe on the hand was not so well said. But.
Well, no, it actually brought up a question for me, Nelly. I'm glad you said it that way, because we are, in a sense, saying your experience is first, and then we're going to find something in that. So there is a kind of primacy in that. Yeah.
That's what I was getting at, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So you pulled quote a paragraph from our dear colleague Whitton Higgins, also the editor of our book, Reflective Meditation, Cultivating Kindness and Curiosity in the Buddhist Company. He helped us enormously conceptualize and edit the book. However, this book preceded it that he wrote, and it was called Revamp. And here's a paragraph about the Satipatthana Sutta.
In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha first suggests that we set up the right conditions for practice. To paraphrase him at the time, go to the forest or the root of a tree or to an empty hut. Sit down by folding our legs crosswise, set our body erect, and establish awareness in front of us. Be attentive and let go of fretting about and hankering for worldly things. Then we can get to the heart of Dharmic meditation and the substance of the sutta.
So, as you know, I'm sure, we don't really suggest you do it this way. You know, we don't suggest you go to the forest. Meditating in your home is most likely where you are. And we don't suggest that you go to the root of a tree, though that could be lovely, or find an empty hut, or fold your legs crosswise, or set your body erect in order to establish awareness. And we don't even suggest that it's in front of you. It could be, awareness could be located in so many different, perceptual ways. But we do suggest that you find a location that is conducive for meditation.
Well, in fact, we started off the retreat with this. And for those of you who weren't there, we talked about, where are you meditating? What's around you? What is the location you're in? What are the conditions that you're dealing with at the time? So in retrospect on reading this and reflecting upon it, he was really giving just one person's or a few people or, some people's conditions for meditation. And we're asking each person to give theirs. So there's a sense of reading the sutta that it gives some guidance, but you have to adapt that guidance to your own practice and to your own lives.
And, the Buddha would never have written, please sit in front of your computer, but turn your video off or turn your audio off or on. The Buddha could never have imagined to suggest this as a good location. And yet, here we are, it's a good location.
Yeah, a different kind of other that wasn't even on the radar at the time.
So far from the radar. It wasn't on the radar when I was a kid, no less.
Yeah.
Or even before the pandemic in some ways, that we could do this so effectively.
Right.
So, our instructions in reflective meditation are kind of, free form. In the book, we call it free range meditation, like free range eggs. But there are these foundations that support us. It's not like willy-nilly. There is something that is supporting us. And that's why I actually like the translations about the 4 foundations of awareness, because I like that feeling of something foundational and supportive.
Right. And to even consider that these 4, which we'll list now, the body. Huh?
Enough teasing.
Okay.
List them.
Yeah. The body is one of the supports or foundations of awareness. And the feeling tones that arise when you have sense contact. So when actually you see something, you hear something, you think about something, you feel something, the feeling tone that arises with that contact.
And not necessarily feeling in the Western emotional sense, because that's in the 3rd foundation.
Right.
In the 2nd foundation is more like, oh, it feels good, it feels bad, it's kind of neither good nor bad. That's really like the automatic thing that, we register.
Right. And that the emotions and moods are looked more at in the list of mind states, which is interesting, that they coincide with our moods coincide with our mind states and our emotions. But we want to be aware of them, and they are considered foundations for support, which is interesting because we often are trying to eliminate those rather than be more aware of them.
Mm-hmm. And finally, the Dhammas, or dharmas would be the Sanskrit pronunciation of that very same word, which are, like we said, the Dharma teachings. Sometimes it's described a bit differently, but I think for our purposes, that's a good enough.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the list, but we're going to go back to the quote of be attentive and let go of fretting and hankering for worldly things. And then we can get to the heart of dharmic meditation and the substance of the sutta.
So we are not suggesting you give up worldly things. That's for monks. Instead, to some extent, we suggest that you learn how to best live in this world rather than give up this world. And live in this world with all its worldly delights and all its worldly difficulties. And within that, how do you care for ourselves and one another in this world we find ourselves in?
And maybe that's the heart of dharmic meditation.
So we will leave it there for this talk.